What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Go Talk on Markets, powered by Poddex, fueled by Go Talk, and presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. With me tonight, Jerm, Facebook fellow, one half of Stuff About Sports. There's a lot to talk about. We got a new game requirement now as a part of the new collective bargaining agreement in the NBA. The NBA's regular season is over, which means we've got NBA awards to predict, and the play-in starts tomorrow. So we're going to make our final play-in predictions, all that and so much more. Stay tuned next.
Give them a shot to do what?
What's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Man, I'm feeling good. This is like my debut on the rebranded Goat Talk with Marcus. Under the network umbrella. You're officially a shot boy. This is great, man.
It's been a long time coming. I've said it maybe 50 times now. I'll say it again. It's a privilege and an honor to be a part of the Shot Boys. It is,
man. It is. Listen, and like I'll pair it what Mike's been saying. You have been technically part of the network anyway, like just working with you, for a long time. But the fact now that you're officially here makes me feel good, makes everybody feel good, and we're glad that you're here.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to be here. There's so much to talk about. NBA, first of all, leave it to the National Basketball Association to give us one of the craziest last days of the season ever. We got Rudy Gobert throwing punches. He's not playing later on this week against the Lakers. Jaden McDaniels also isn't playing later on this week because he punched a wall because Rudy Gobert punched Kyle Anderson. There's just so much going on, and there's so much to talk about. But let's start with this new game requirement now that it's in the new collective bargaining agreement for the NBA. 65 games, Jerm. 65 games. That too much? That is 17 games now a player is allowed to miss before they are quote unquote ineligible for awards, all NBA teams, things like that. Do you think that curbs load management for next season?
I hope so. This is perfect. I think 65 games is perfect. If you can't play a certain amount of games, you should not be in consideration for any type of awards, all NBA, MVP, whatever you may want. Now, let's think about average NBA contracts, 4 years, 5 years, whatever.
Yeah.
If you can't play 65 games 4 years in a row, you shouldn't be one of the two max guys on your team anyway. You shouldn't be considered. You don't have to make an all NBA every year to qualify for the max. Yeah. So if there's a season where you get hurt or something happens and you only played 64 games or 60 games, that's just the luck of the draw. But your goal, everybody's goal, especially if you're a top tier player, should be to play 85% of the season. Like, so I love it, man. This is terrific for the NBA.
So look, my whole thing, and I got so much heat for this with Zion, was there's no way you're paying a guy in Zion Williamson or extending when he got extended when he at that point he played 81 games.
Yeah.
In his career.
Yeah.
Jerm, there's 82 games in a season.
Yeah.
And in 3 years, he played 81 games. Like, I think this is great from a long-term standpoint. The other thing, too, is, like, when you're talking about, again, like, paying guys, like, we say this all the time on these shows, like, the best ability is availability. And if you're not available, I'm not paying you, right? Like, that was the whole thing, like, with Kyrie Irving to a lesser degree, right? Is like, why should we pay Kyrie Irving when he wants to just take random days off of the course of the year, right? Why are we going to pay a guy like a Zion Williamson who spends so much time hurt, right? Now, if you're talking about a guy like a Kevin Durant, or you're talking about a guy like a LeBron James who has injuries here and there, that it's just like usually they're available, and when they're available, they're towards the cream of the crop. We're not talking about a guy like Kawhi Leonard who has habitually sat out of back-to-back since 2017. They shouldn't be awarded supermax contracts. I'm not paying you all this money for you can't play 85. You can't play 65 games. You got to miss 20 games in the season for us to be relevant, right? Like, I love this. I know there's a lot of people that are like, this isn't going to curb load management because of the idea that, like, the regular season doesn't matter, but maybe it will. Like, there's some guys out there that care about being on an all NBA team. There's some guys out there that want to win MVP, that want to be the defensive player of the year, that want to be recognized as the sixth man of the year, or most improved, and things like that. Like, if we're being honest, the only person who this doesn't affect is the coach.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
This is the only award this doesn't affect. But for all the and I think rookie of the year to a lesser degree as well, because usually rookies, if you're the rookie of the year, you've played a large chunk of the season anyway. But like, you're talking about if you want to be the cream of the crop, of course you got to play. 85%, missing 17 games. You miss a couple back-to-backs here and there. Maybe you're hurt for a couple things here and there, but like, that's fine.
Yeah,
that should not be that much of an issue for players at this point.
And so the other thing is with the CBA, positionless all NBA teams. With the 65 game eligibility, truly the 15 best players are going to make it, which is something that a lot of us have clamored for anyway.
Yeah.
Just rank the 15 best players, however you want to do it, positionless or not. If the first team is all centers, so be it. If the centers are that great, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Well, Embiid made second team last year, and he should have been first team. It's just that's the reality of it. And so, now what you'll get what happened with Mikal Bridges the other day. You know, he's the NBA's Iron Man. He's played 392 consecutive games.
Yep.
They put him in a meaningless game at the last game of the season. They did the jump ball. He committed a foul.
Yep.
Now, you'll see more of that. That's how they'll do the load management. They'll put the guys in for 5 minutes or so, or even just one possession, take them out, whatever, man. Is it shameless? Sure. I don't know. But
sure.
You have to try to protect the integrity of the NBA somehow. This is a great step. So you'll get some shameless activity. It's fine. You know, subbing out for the rest of the game after the first few minutes, I don't care about. I care about truly giving the people who show up to work their just due. I understand this year, if the 65 game requirement was active, Durant, LeBron, Dame, Ja Morant, Kyrie, Harden, I get that. Ja Morant and Kyrie are different because they miss time because of their own stupidity.
Right.
But I do understand injuries happen.
Right.
An injury year, it's an injury year. You know, but if in a 4 or 5 year stretch and you've played more than 65 games, you know, 3 or 4 out of those 5 or 6, to me, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at I think Kevin Durant only played 47 games this year, and there's a lot of people that didn't have him, like people that I've seen on Twitter and things that kind of do this and they make up their All NBA teams. They didn't have him on there anyway. Not because of that, but just because, kind of because of that. He only played a little bit more than half the season. So that makes sense. If you're playing 50 games a year, you don't deserve to be on anything.
Right.
You don't deserve, you missed 32 games and you want me to give you a vote for MVP? You're crazy. Now, if you tear your Achilles, that's different. There's nothing we can do about that. But like I said, you're sitting out back-to-backs. A guy like, Kawhi Leonard sitting out back-to-back just because he wants to. He's been doing it for the last 5 years. Okay, that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. But don't be upset if you're not an All-NBA talent or considered All-NBA talent. And then don't be upset then if you're not getting those All-NBAs leads to you not getting the money that you think you deserve or whatever the case may be. So maybe I hope the players take this seriously because that means we get to see, again, for the casual fan, we get to see those guys show up and suit up and play ball more often than not, as opposed to showing up and, they're on the bench today because they just didn't feel like playing. Let's jump into some awards.
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's start with MVP. I think you and I have the exact same MVP because there's only one right answer to this question. So I'll give you the floor. I'll let you do your due and spill the gospel that is Joel Embiid as MVP.
Listen, all you analytics nerds out there can bust out your Excel spreadsheets and all your data points. I get what the numbers tell you. In Kawhi's MVP year, Kawhi's universally described as a great defender, one of the best defenders in the NBA. But if you look at Kawhi's MVP year, the numbers say he wasn't a good defender. So I know what the numbers say when it comes to Nikola Jokic defensively. But have you watched any of the games? He's not that good. The numbers will lie to you. Numbers have their place, but you have to watch the game. I understand what the numbers say about Giannis and what his team has accomplished. They're well coached, all that good stuff. Watch the games. You can't tell me there's not been a more dominant player in the NBA this year, and maybe even last year, than Joel Embiid. And in a more practical term, because we understand how these things go, if you want just a shameless answer from me, it's Joel Embiid's turn, dog. Sorry. Like, that's just the way the NBA works. It was Steve Nash's turn. He took it from Kobe Bryant. Kobe definitely deserved the MVP that year.
Yeah.
So if you want to give it to Giannis, I'm okay with Giannis more than I'm okay with Jokic. But you're not going to sit there and tell me, with everything Joel Embiid had to deal with, specifically last year, where he was robbed of the MVP. He's a 2-time scoring champ for a big man. I mean, not done since Shaq, to do it once, let alone twice, did it again. So no, Joel Embiid is the MVP. Sorry. I don't want to talk numbers. Don't give me all these numbers. We can pick any numbers we want to justify our arguments. Just watch the games, look at them. Joel, the guy that and we're not even talking about Giannis, and I can be talked into Giannis, but what people are doing, they're giving me Jokic. What did Joel Embiid do to Jokic earlier in the season? Don't drop 47 on his head. Excuse me. All right. Yeah. Don't talk. I mean, enough. Don't talk to me about him ducking. Don't talk to me about any of that nonsense. Joel Embiid has nothing to prove. He's embarrassed Jokic many times. It's okay. It's Embiid's turn. Sorry, JT. Shout out to JT and the Don. It's Joel Embiid's turn. If you want a simple answer, I don't want to get into all the craziness arguments. I know what the numbers say, but watch the games. It's Joel Embiid's turn.
I mean, you look at what Joel Embiid does on both sides of the floor. Like, it's actually ridiculous how people continue to make this argument that Jokic is better on both sides of the ball. Like, if you want to say Jokic is more efficient, I can't knock you there. He is more efficient. He takes most of his shots within 10 feet of the paint. So sure, he's more efficient. But Embiid is more lethal at all three levels, and he's more lethal defensively. Now, you mentioned Giannis. I wanted to ask too, like, and you kind of answered this, like, does Giannis not deserve a little bit more oomph? Like it feels like all year it's just been Jokic and Embiid. I mean, I kind of, like, rightfully so. Like, these are the two best players at the position. They're 1A, 1B. You ask me, it's Embiid's better. You ask other people, Jokic is better, right? Giannis has done something that only one other man has done ever, and it's Wilt. And Wilt seems to be the only other person to do most things nowadays in the NBA. Like, he's the only player ever to average, since Wilt, to average 31 and 10, I believe. And he's the first person ever to do that on 55% shooting. Like, Giannis deserves a lot more, I think, than Jokic. And I think this all boils down to one thing. The night last week, right, when Embiid went off against the Celtics, I believe it was, and dropped almost 50 or maybe a little bit over 50. That same night, Jokic lost. He had 15 points and 10 boards to the Rockets, who are tied for first as a 14% chance to get Victor Wembanyama, and have been eliminated from the playoffs for at least a month now. Like, you cannot. We keep doing this thing with Jokic where we kind of move the goalpost, and one day it's like, oh, Jokic is the MVP because he doesn't have help, and then it's kind of like, okay, he loses, it's because he doesn't have help. I don't care if he has help or not. You can't lose to the Rockets as a two-time MVP and as a leading candidate for the MVP. You just can't do it. But I do think, though, I don't think he'll win it, but I do think, though, that Giannis has been slighted, ironically enough, because a lot of people say he's the best in the world. I do think, though, ironically enough, Giannis has been slighted a bit in this MVP conversation because everyone wants to hold on to Jokic, but of course Embiid is always going to be there. I think this is between Embiid and Giannis. I do think Embiid's going to get it, but I think this race is Embiid and Giannis. I don't think this race was ever really Embiid and Jokic. Jokic hasn't had that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, we say in college football, like, this is your Heisman moment. Like, in the NFL, there's always that one game you look at, like, this is why you're MVP. Jokic hasn't had a game this season where you look at and you say, this is why he's the MVP. And he had that opportunity against Embiid the first time, and he failed. And then that's why people try to make a big deal about Embiid not playing the second time around. And it's like, Embiid is like you said, I dropped almost 50 on this dude a couple weeks ago. What I got to play him? What more does Joel Embiid have to prove until he finally gets his respect? Embiid's MVP. I don't think it's particularly close. I think the only one that comes close, hold the candle, is Giannis for sure.
Like I said, if they wanted to give it to Giannis, his third MVP, I honestly wouldn't be mad. The numbers support it, and the eye test supports it. But again, it's Joel's turn, man. Like, I know people don't like to hear that, but it's true. That's just the way it is. You can't punish Joel Embiid because Giannis has a better team. You know what I mean? You can't punish Joel, especially when Joel's finished second, multiple times. It's just simply what it's going to be. Now, I also, if I'm putting my conspiracy hat in, I think I think Giannis winning a third MVP and then potentially winning another NBA championship, you have to start putting Giannis in the GOAT debate. LeBron, put him, making Giannis the Patrick Mahomes of the NBA, where
Sure.
early in his, but you can
Yeah.
see it, like just the stuff he's doing is so unprecedented.
Yeah.
LeBron hasn't done what Giannis has done in terms
No.
of accomplishments at his age, or
Mhm.
and then you have the factor of the team that drafted him, they
Yeah.
built around him,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
type of, LeBron. That's why LeBron will never be the GOAT to me. It's just he's altered he's manufactured his destiny, which is his right. He has every right to do it.
Right.
Him, Kevin Durant, you do what you got to do, man. Dame tried to do what Giannis did, and it's gonna hurt him. It's gonna hurt his legacy.
Yeah.
But Giannis stayed with his team. His team properly built a roster around him. Also, he's great. He had the perfect mixture. And if you give him another MVP this early in his career, where his championship window was wide open,
Mhm.
those things start to stack up, man. And
Yeah.
you start moving LeBron out of the conversation, something that it's taken the NBA and sports media 20 years to do. And then Giannis is doing it in what, year 7, 8, not whatever year he's in. It's maybe a little longer than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
He was drafted, I believe, in like 2013 or something. So this is probably year 10 for him, which is
10.
crazy because he spent he spent the first half of his career. We didn't know who he was.
Right.
But
But again, he spent his first half.
Yeah.
He spent his first half of his career as Ben Simmons, just
Yeah.
no game, but working on it steadily every year, getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's, arguably the best player in the league.
I mean, and then again, like Giannis, like you're right. You talk about 3 MVPs in 5 years. Add on to that the Defensive Player of the Year. Add on to that the championship and the MVP and the Finals MVP. Like that is in just that span alone. Like there's not many people in a 5-year span that can say they've won 3 MVPs, a championship, and a Finals MVP and a Defensive Player of the Year. Like LeBron can't say that. Now, he teases all the time that he should be able to say that, and that they gave Marc Gasol his Defensive Player of the Year way back in the day, and he would be a part of that group. But like, I think the only people in that group is Jordan and I think Olajuwon. Like that's it. Like that's he's already one of with them as the only players to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year. So like he is definitely, worst comes to worst, even if Giannis is not on a GOAT trajectory, Giannis is absolutely on a top 10 trajectory. Like he's got a lot of time left, and when it's all said and done, we're looking at that bottom half of the top 7 or that bottom half of the top 10, and really we're talking about, for most people, that consists of like some combination of Hakeem and Duncan and Bird. Like that collection of people there, are gonna have to start getting moved down as Giannis continues to get great. I do think that Shaq and Kobe for most people are like 5 and 6, and I think for most people they're always going to be 5 and 6. Some people think they're up in the top 5, like whatever the case may be. But that 7 to 10, it's usually some collection of Olajuwon and Bird and Duncan. As Giannis continues to become great, and then as we get closer to KD's retirement and closer to Curry's retirement, those names are going to start dropping off. Giannis might be on a GOAT trajectory though if he wins MVP. That's a fair point. That is a fair point. Speaking of Defensive Player of the Years, right? I think this DPOY race is probably a lot closer than I think a lot of people want to admit, or maybe even anticipated in the beginning of the year. I do think it's a 2-horse race. I think it's either Brook Lopez or Jaren Jackson. Maybe there's someone else out there, but I don't think there is, just from having watched basketball this year. And it's super close because their stats are almost identical. Yeah. Like they have been doing they average about the same amount of rebounds. They average about the same amount of assists. Jaren Jackson averages 3 blocks a game and Brook Lopez averages 2.8. And for all you advanced stats nerds out there, they both have 4 defensive win shares, and both of their defense box plus minus is about 2. I think Lopez is at 1.4 or something, and Jaren's is right at 2. But DPOY this year, who you got?
So I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because we just talked about the MVP race, and it's this person's turn because the stats are so close. Blah 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 blah.
Yep.
With the rest of these awards, I will award the player whose team is doing better. And in this situation, it's Brook Lopez.
Yeah.
And he is the defensive anchor of that team. I understand that Jaren Jackson is a great defender, but that team defense for Memphis is what got them there. So I am going to go with Brook Lopez this year, only because I also think he does deserve some shine. He's been an underrated player most of his career. He's transformed his game tremendously over the years to stick around and become an actual key piece on a championship caliber team. So I think he should get rewarded for that. And that's why, if I had a vote, I would give it to Brook Lopez.
He absolutely should. And I'll go a step further too. Brook Lopez, first of all, fun fact about Brook Lopez, all-time leading scorer for the Nets, still, which I
Oh
think
my Lord, that's hilarious.
which I think is just hilarious. But no, you're 100% right. Like Brook Lopez is 1000% the defensive anchor for this team, and it's crazy when you think about it because Giannis is still wearing that jersey every single night. But he really is, and it's and he can do like whatever you need. Like you need him to go out there, get dirty, grab the boards. He can do that. You need him to go out there and get, and defend whoever the other guy's five is. He can do that as well. Brook Lopez, but he's also not just like the defensive anchor. Like he's just the anchor of the team overall. Like he's that vocal leader. He's that emotional leader. I know we're talking defensive player of the year, but you look back at a lot of those games when they've got tough opponents. Like when they need someone to come off and just kind of hit those shots in those big moments, Brook does that as well. And that has nothing to do with defensive player of the year. I just wanted to give Brook Lopez his flowers for a second. I want to talk about Bam Adebayo, who I think in the beginning of the year, a lot of people thought was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. This is the second or third year in a row that Bam was kind of expected to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, or be the Defensive Player of the Year, and he fell short. I know last year a lot of people didn't like it because Marcus Smart was Defensive Player of the Year, but also like Bam wouldn't have won it last year because if Robert Williams didn't get hurt, Robert Williams would have been the Defensive Player of the Year last year as well. What are we doing with Bam at this point? Like, is Bam, what's happening with him in South Beach? Because he hasn't seemed to hit where we've all thought he was going to hit but come this point in his career.
Remember what I said back on Stuff About Sports about Lamar Jackson and crowning him?
Yep.
You need a 3-year sample size of consistently getting better. We gave Bam too much too early, and he has regressed. And it's not just on him. There are just other players that are coming up. I had to look up the defense because there was a player that we were missing, and I couldn't think of his name, so I looked him up real quick. Evan Mobley from the Cleveland Cavaliers, who has 100.1, a higher defensive rating than Jaren Jackson. The problem is Jaren Jackson's stats defensively are better, but in terms of defensive rating, Evan Mobley is a little bit above him, slightly below Brook Lopez.
Yeah,
but so there's a little bit of maybe Bam's been banged up, maybe he just hit a ceiling. Also, players can just come up and pass you, man. It happens. And we crowned Bam. We gave him the all-star nods. They gave him the key to the city to Miami. They were going to be a championship team, blah, 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 blah. And he just hasn't taken that step that you need to cement yourself like Brook Lopez or like some of the great defenders in the league.
100%. And by the way, Evan Mobley, I think, is D-Boy next year. I've been a fan of Evan Mobley from the beginning, like from the moment he was drafted, even when he was in college. You look at Evan Mobley, and Evan Mobley is everything that any franchise in the NBA today could want as it pertains to a big man down low. And the crazy thing is, he doesn't do it often, but he is getting better at being able to stretch the floor. But just as a defensive anchor, like he is everything you want. He's long, he can crash boards, he can block shots, and he's not that bad at getting steals either. I love Evan Mobley. I think Evan Mobley is amazing. The Smody race, the 6th Man of the Year race this year has been interesting. When Russ was in LA, we all thought that Russ was going to be the 6th Man of the Year because he was playing well. He ends up moving across the hall from the Lakers to the Clippers, and he had to start more games, so he's not even in the conversation anymore because he started too many games. Malcolm Brogdon, a lot of people thought in the offseason he got signed, he was going to be the 6th Man of the Year for Boston, but Emmanuel Quickly over the last month and a half with the Knicks has really taken a next step. He's had a couple of 20, 25-point games. I think he's had a couple of 30 balls also. He's been balling out as well. 6th Man of the Year for you, Jerm. Is it Quickly? Is it Brogdon? Is it still Russ somehow? Is it somebody else? Who's Smody?
I'm going to stick with Malcolm Brogdon. I get Quickly had a great month, but Brogdon's been solid all season, and I can't let 1 month at the end of the season. And it'd be one thing if Quickly's stats like all of a sudden just skyrocketed past, but they average about the same amount of assists, same amount of points. I think Brogdon gets a little bit more rebounds, whatever, but
he does.
So I get their stats are similar, but I have to reward a bigger sample size of work, and so I will award Malcolm Brogdon as much as it pains me to give the Celtics any type of shine. I gotta stick with Brogdon there.
So I was one of those in the beginning that like loved the Malcolm Brogdon signing because of what it meant for the Celtics. When you look at how they fell short to the Warriors in the finals, a lot of it had to do with a lack of not a lack of depth defensively, or I mean off the bench, but in a way a lack of depth off the bench. Like what we have to remember with Marcus Smart is, as phenomenal as he has been for the Celtics at this point in his career, Marcus Smart plays point guard because he's not a reliable shooter. Like that is what it is. When Marcus Smart was drafted, he was a shooting guard.
Yeah.
He was a very unreliable shooting guard, and they had to figure out a way to put shooters around him in order for him to be successful. And this is no shot at Marcus Smart because it's worked. He's obviously the reigning defensive player of the year. And Malcolm Brogdon is the complete opposite. Like he was drafted as a point guard, but he was always able to shoot the ball, and he's been able to be just like what Derek White was for them last year. And I think even still a little bit to a degree Al Horford as well, even though Al Horford starts like just a spark plug off the bench. He has that veteran experience from being with the Bucks. He never won the championship with the Bucks, but of course he played great with the Bucks when he was there. And as much as I really want to say that Malcolm Brogdon is the sixth man of the year, I just have to show love to Emmanuel quickly. What is against my religion, because I don't like saying anything nice about the Knicks because they're just the epitome of like they're the ultimate front runner.
Yeah.
But, and I know we don't award just months at a time. And if we're being completely honest, if I'm thinking with my head, Malcolm Brogdon's definitely the sixth man of the year.
Yeah.
But if I'm going with my heart, like what Emmanuel quickly has been able to do over the past couple of month and a half, almost 2 months, has been great. Like he's definitely risen to the occasion. Like we obviously saw, Jalen Brunson's been balling out this season. We've seen Julius Randle ball out this season. RJ Barrett's had his ups and his downs, but Emmanuel quickly has firmly positioned himself on that Knicks roster as the guy off the bench, kind of like what we saw Tyler Hero do in the bubble for the Heat as the guy off the bench for them. And obviously that resulted in him winning sixth man of the year last year eventually. I do think Emmanuel quickly's time will come. I do think that Brogdon's going to win it. But what we saw towards this backstretch for quickly this year is, I think, just a drop in a bucket of what we'll see from him for years to come. And I think we will see Emmanuel quickly as the sixth man of the year, if not next season, the season after. I do think his time is coming. If I'm going my heart, I'd take quickly, but I agree with you. Malcolm Brogdon is the no-brainer pick here because he's just been doing it from the time the season started until the time the season ended.
And even with the month of greatness from quickly, I mean, if you look at the numbers down to percentages, Brogdon literally does everything better than quickly. I mean, his 3-point percentage is better, his field goal percentage is better. I do understand the notion of wanting to reward a New York Knick. It's good for the NBA if somebody from the Knicks is doing well. Just be happy with Jalen Brunson, be happy with the playoffs, but let's not go crazy here. Malcolm Brogdon, and I agree with what you're saying. Quickly, I think, has found something, and he absolutely can put himself in the upper echelon of six men in the league. Bobby Portis, Brogdon now. And so I'm with you there. But as far as this year goes, it has to be, to me, Malcolm Brogdon. But I do understand. The love, because it's not just you. I see it social media. I've listened to other sports podcasts. A lot of people are giving quickly some love. I think it's a little bit of prisoner of the moment, but I do understand it, and I wouldn't be mad if he got it either.
For sure. We were talking about turns earlier. His turn is coming. It is going to be coming.
Yeah.
I think these next two are probably going to be the easiest to vote for. We'll start with Rookie of the Year. Like, there's anyone not named Paolo Banchero. Walking out of this season, Rookie of the Year. Like, the year that he's had is phenomenal. I saw somewhere the other day that he had, I believe it was 40 20-point games, which is the most for a rookie since LeBron. Which and we all remember how amazing LeBron's rookie year was. Paolo for the Magic he's one of the very few rookies we've seen over the last couple of years that's been able to come in and just do what needs to be done for a bad team. Like when you are picked as a lottery pick, you're going to a bad basketball team.
Right.
Like that is just the reality of the situation, not just with basketball, but with football and any sport. If you're one of the top 3, top 5 picks, whatever, you're going to a bad basketball team unless a bad basketball team made a bad trade or a good team made a bad trade and they ended up being bad the year after, in the case of the Denver Broncos for this year for the Seahawks. Lucky them. But Paolo's been fantastic. And I know that Jalen Williams has been coming up over. I know Benedict Mathurin kind of had his little time, but it's been Paolo. It's been Paolo through and through from top to bottom. What's interesting for me though is, do you think Paolo would have been rookie of the year this year if Chet didn't get hurt in Pro-Am? Because I think
Man,
Chet was going to be primed with what we saw the Thunder do this year, specifically with the jump that SGA made. I think Chet would have made this a really, really, really tight 1-2 race for rookie of the year if he didn't mess his foot up in the offseason.
it's hard for me to say because I don't know how Chet would have played in the NBA.
Sure.
I get the hype. I am excited to see him. I have to see it first, man. Like I have to see it against real NBA competition, not a bunch of G leaguers, not a bunch of guys who are going to be, not on the team. Like I need to see it against real NBA players, night in, night out. I need to see if his body will hold up. Obviously, not off to a great start, but I see the talent. I get the hype, but I have to see it before I even. I mean, for a rookie to come in, drop 20 on the season, carry that. I mean, I know they only won 16 games or whatever, but shout out to Don. That the future's bright. You didn't have Markelle Fultz for a good chunk of the beginning of the year. Markelle came in and played excellent for the time he was there. It seems like the team is ready to start rebuilding the proper way. They've shed some bad contracts, and I'm sure they're going to continue to do so. You just keep drafting, try to draft as well as you can, and you got to. Looks like you have a franchise player, so keep it going and see what happens in the future.
And I don't know how the chips will fall, but if they can somehow manage to get Scoot as well back to back with that, I think that'd be nice. I know they've got a lot of guards already. I know they got Cole Anthony and Marco Fultz, like you mentioned, but I think Scoot and Paolo could definitely be a problem.
It's a guard league, man. I mean,
it is. Yeah.
I know we just talked about Giannis and Embiid and Joker, but those guys are unicorns. That's not how today's NBA. It may not even work for Joker and Embiid. But it's just and the Greek Freaks. He's an anomaly. He's even more of a unicorn than the other two.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of building an NBA team, teams are gearing more towards what Orlando has currently than what Denver or Philly has.
100%. And then the last one, like Joe Mazzulla was a feel good story because of how he got the job. And you can look at a bunch of different places, but Mike Brown is the coach of the year. There's no way. There's no way. He's got the Kings into their first postseason, and God knows how long. I want to say the first time in my lifetime, but I don't think so. I think they did make the playoffs. It was 2006. Well, not in my lifetime, but
yeah.
Just barely.
Very close. Very close
in my lifetime.
I believe that 2006 was the last time they made it.
They won. Here's a thing that only Kings fans would be excited for. I've always held this position. This is not a shot at the Kings. This is just how I feel about basketball. If there's one sport where winning a division doesn't matter, it's the NBA. Like it's the only sport that it doesn't matter. But props to the Kings for winning the Pacific Division for the first time, I think ever, if not for the first time in a long time. But it's Mike Brown, and we've always we've always loved Mike Brown. Mike Brown has always been one of the fan favorite coaches around the league, not just for players and other coaches, but for fans. Like he's such a good dude. He showed that when I think Steve Kerr a couple years ago for the Warriors, he either got suspended or had to take some time away, and he stepped in and coached the Warriors. I think it was during the year after COVID when we had first came back, and Steve Kerr had COVID. Mike Brown coached him through that stretch and things like that. Like Mike Brown has always shown he was the head coach for the Cavs when LeBron first got there way back when. So he's always been a good coach. Shout out to Mike Brown. If anybody other than Mike Brown is named coach of the year this year, I'm riding 100%.
Yeah,
because there's no one that he could even come close. I mean, I guess it's Joe Mazzulla, but the Celtics were in the finals last year. Right. And that's no shot at Joe Mazzulla because he's done an amazing job this year. But the Celtics were in the finals last year. The Kings were picking fourth or fifth last year, and now they're in the playoffs, and not just the play-in, they're in the playoffs. Yeah, like they are the third seed, and they're going to be hosting a playoff series. Like that 100%. Is all credit goes. Mike Brown's the Dan Campbell of the NBA.
Yeah,
I think it's very safe to say that he is. Yeah. He's a great culture guy. He's a player's coach. He stands up for his players. He pushes them to be the best that they can be, and he is the Dan Campbell of the NBA. I think he showed that 100% this year.
So here's where you have to kind of measure it out, right? So what's the better story? Mike Brown taking the lowly Kings to a third seed in the West, hosting a playoff game when people didn't even predict they'd be in the play-in. They'd be the worst team in the league. Or Joe Mazzulla, who took over a team where their coach that they had hired had to get suspended for a year, and he just came out of nowhere and led them. Me personally would absolutely give it to Mike Brown. It's the
Yeah.
Kings, dog. Like you
Yeah.
said, they haven't won anything since 2006. I mean, the last time the Kings were relevant, I was a child watching them face Kobe and Shaq and the Lakers with Peja and Doug Christie and and Chris Webber, like that. I mean, that's ages ago in sports years. So, I remember the ugly 3D logo they used to have in the center of their court. Like, I mean, Jesus. I would personally give it to Mike Brown. One, I think he just deserves it. All the stuff he's had to deal with, being the scapegoat for LeBron, and then the Cavaliers once LeBron left, and then just being the scapegoat for the Lakers. I need Mike Brown deserves his flowers, and I think
100%.
I think Joe Mazzulla, he also deserves flowers, but it's Mike Brown's turn. As simple as that. Simple as that.
And again, like we talk a lot about stories with MVP and all that. Like the only award really where the story matters is Coach of the Year. That's the only award really in the NBA where the story matters. Like we like to talk about narratives for MVP, we like to talk about narratives for Rookie of the Year. We like to talk about narratives to a lesser degree for Most Improved Player. Narratives matter for Coach of the Year. And to your point, like again, shout out to Joe Mazzulla for being able to step up from the assistant head coaching job to the head coaching job, and he just got inked to a long-term deal after that too because of what he's done. But let's remember where the Celtics were at this time last season. They were in the playoffs. They swept the Nets, beat the Bucks in 6, beat the Heat in 7, lost to the eventual champion Warriors in 6 in the NBA Finals. We expected the Celtics to be good with Ime Udoka as coach. Now, did we think that there might be a fall off? Maybe they wouldn't win as many games. They were still going to be the cream of the crop. No one thought the Kings were going to be the 3rd seed in the West. This has to go Mike Brown. I don't know if there's ever been a unanimous Coach of the Year winner. If there hasn't been, Mike Brown should be the first. Because again, like it doesn't make sense. And if someone gives a pity vote to Joe Mazzulla, they're a Celtics fan, they should be barred from the committee. Straight up like that. Because it has to go to Mike. There's no way it doesn't go to Mike. I forgot to mention this in the list, but I realized when I was getting ready for today that I forgot to include Most Improved Player.
That's cool.
I do think, again, just like with the Mike Brown thing, I think this is a story thing, and I think the only person that really has a legit like grasp on Most Improved is Lauri Markkanen. I know the Jazz fell off towards the end of the season, but like, I can't think of anyone else that could be named Most Improved other than him. He had a career year across the board, and he was an all-star. He had the Jazz as one of the best teams in the conference at the beginning of the season. Obviously, other teams in the West got their lives together and they fell off and they missed the playoffs. But I feel like it has to be Lauri. He averaged 26 and 9 on almost 50, 40, 90. He was like 49, 39, and 88, I think. I feel like it has to be Lauri Markkanen. I can't think of anyone else that would maybe come close to being Most Improved at this point.
The only person I would give it to, or even think about giving it to, is SGA over in OKC.
That's fair.
I mean, he averaged probably 30 points per game.
He did average 30 this year, yeah.
But Lauri, I mean, SGA was already considered a good player. You know what I mean? Lauri was floundering in Chicago. I think people knew he had potential, but it just never, like, you could see SGA as a good player.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he just took the reins but I think you're right. I think just what he did with the Jazz this year, especially, the Jazz traded away. You think about the story, right? SGA goes to from the Clippers to OKC. OKC, they're a decent little squad. They got a bunch of picks, whatever. The Jazz gave up Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, and it was like, oh, these guys are donezo. We're talking about them like they're the Kings, or what the Kings should have been. And here come the Jazz. You know what I'm saying? So, and then on top of that, points are a thing, but Lauri's also doing it defensively.
Yes,
rebounds. I mean, assist. He's doing it all. So, I'm with you. I think Lauri probably will get it. I think it is a better story, but I think SGA also is worthy of some type of consideration. Before we move on, I was looking at the current people who have already voted and made their votes public. Joel Embiid has 9 first place votes. Giannis has 3 and Joker has 2. So
great. That's
it's looking good. Let's keep it going.
Great. Well, this is so the playoffs are almost here, right? Playoffs start on the 15th between tomorrow and the 13th, I believe, we will figure out who the 7th and 8th seeds of each conference will be. For those of you guys that don't know the play-in concept, and believe me, I had to go over it again today because it's still a little bit confusing. But for the 7th seed and 8th seed teams that play tomorrow, so the Hawks, the Heat, the Lakers, and the Wolves, the winner of that game will be the 7th seed and will play whoever the 2 seed is. So for the Western Conference, for the Lakers and the Wolves, I believe that is the Grizzlies. And for the Eastern Conference, I believe that's the Celtics. I think the Bucks are the first seed. The loser of that game still has another shot after the 9-10 games. So for the Bulls and the Raptors and the Thunder and the Pelicans, it's win for another chance to get in. You lose that game, you're going home. You win that game, you play the loser of the 7-8 game, and the winner of the winner of the third game is the 8th seed and plays the 1 seed out of the conference, which in the West is Denver, and in the East, I believe, is Milwaukee. So with all that being said, let's start with Hawks Heat. The Hawks have been the epitome of mediocrity this year. Yeah. Literally, like there was a point in time over a stretch they were 1-1 in their last 2 games and 4-4 in the last 4. Like they were just up and down, up and down, up and down. There was a lot of hype going into the season because of the DeJounte Murray trade with the Spurs. Mm-hmm. Hasn't really panned out. There's now been reports as recent as a couple hours ago that the front office has been given the green light by ownership, I believe it is, to start listening to trades for Trae Young. So this Hawks thing could blow up before it even really gets started. But 7-8 game Hawks Heat, who do you think locks up the 7th seed and gets to go to Boston for their first round exit?
So if you look at what happened this year, the Heat have beaten the Hawks 3 of the 4 meetings they had this year. Yep. Last year in the playoffs, Miami beat them 4-1. Mm-hmm. And Atlanta is 3-10 versus the Heat over the past 2 seasons. Yeah. The only victory they had is when Jimmy Butler didn't play. Guess what, folks? Jimmy Butler's playing. 2, there is such thing as playoff Jimmy. Now, I get this play in, but it's a playoff. And so Jimmy Butler, this is when Jimmy Butler turns it on. Not really good news for the Atlanta Hawks. Now, any given Sunday in basketball, whatever, Trae Young can go nuts. DeJounte Murray can go nuts, hit a bunch of perimeter shots. That's the only shot they have. Try to spread Miami out, hit 3-pointers. But I mean, history tells you what the story's going to be. You know.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to roll with Miami on this one, easy.
I agree with you. And again, we just want to talk about this because it was reported today. If the Hawks blow it up, like if that's the direction you're going, number one, I feel like you have to think that the things that happened this season between Trae Young and Nate McMillan definitely have a part in it. Yeah. Because you don't go into the season thinking that you're going to move on from Trae Young and then trade for DeJounte Murray. Like you can't possibly think that.
And so then fire your coach on top of it.
And then fire your coach on top of it. So that definitely wasn't the direction heading into the season. That is the direction coming out of it, right? If you're looking to move on from Trae Young, then I feel like we also have to, and I know we talk about this for the past couple seasons now, but like John Collins also has to be on the move also. Yeah. And I feel like to a lesser degree, if you're going to move on from Trae Young and to a lesser degree John Collins, I know you just got him this season, but you're going to have to trade DeJounte too. Like you're going to get back as much as possible. If that's really the direction that they're going, there's no way they're going to move on from Trae Young and try. I mean, of course there's a way, but it would just be counterproductive to move on from Trae Young and not also move on from the other 2 very young guys that could still go out there and be productive for other teams that are still maybe not in John Collins' case, but at least for DeJounte Murray, like he's still worth a first round pick, at least maybe some type of role player in there. Like if you're gonna do it, Atlanta, do it.
Yeah.
Don't do the thing like where you're putting your toe in the water to see if it's cool or like warm or not. Like if you're gonna go all out and just hit the TNT and blow it up. Send Trae Young somewhere, send DeJounte Murray somewhere, send John Collins somewhere. I think Clint Capella has definitely proven that he's still valuable from what he's done so far. Like if you want to trade Clint Capella, trade him too. Like if you're gonna blow it up, Atlanta, blow it all the way up. Don't half do it and then like do it. Don't do it periodically. Like do what the Thunder did. Do what the Jazz did. Yep. Get it all out of the way right now and get as many picks up as possible and then just try it again from scratch. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it and do it successfully, because you move on from Trae Young and then you want to wait and see what happens. You want to move on from DeJounte. You want to wait. Like that's just too much. I think DeJounte would be the last to be traded because they just got him. But like At the end of the day, if you're going to move on from Trae Young, you can't keep DeJounte and John Collins or Clint Capella. Really, just get rid of all of them.
Yeah,
like that's the business of it. Just get rid of all of them and start from scratch. If that's what you want to do. I was very shocked though to hear that.
I'm not shocked. What's going to really be bad is when they can't find a proper coach, and they, that was the mind-boggling thing to me. You choose Trae Young over Nate McMillan, and then now you're trying to trade Trae Young after you've already fired Nate McMillan because of Trae Young, and now you have to look for a good coach, which is hard to come by. And I think Nate McMillan is a really good coach. But this is what happens when franchises choose their stars over their coaches, over the structure, over the culture. They let and it was because they traded Luka Doncic for Trae Young, and they don't want to admit that they made a mistake. And so what you do is you fire Nate McMillan because him and Trae Young aren't getting along. But now Trae Young is running amok because the only person that could keep Trae Young in check was Nate McMillan. And now that he's gone, prisoners running the asylum, and now here we are. And I think you're right. Is there a scenario where maybe they trade Trae Young and try to surround Collins and Murray and Capella with some shooters and see how that goes? I'm not a fan of half rebuilds either. I don't know if that's a championship contending. I mean, when you look at the landscape of the East, you have to look at the Cavs and the Knicks coming up. The Magic will get there eventually. The Bulls. Yeah, well, Bulls are
we're witnessing a half. Like the Bulls try to do a half rebuild. Look at where they're at. They're the 10th seed, fighting for a spot in the playoffs. Like if you're gonna, I've always, if you're gonna rebuild a team, especially in basketball, like you might be able to get away with a half rebuild in football just because there's 53 men on the roster and there's like you never know who could come up and have a breakout season. There's like 15 guys on a roster and the G League team, and we don't really see G League players all often, so it doesn't even matter. Like if you're gonna rebuild the roster, rebuild the roster. Like just push all the chips to the middle of the table and just say they're all on the table. Give me your best offer, and you take whatever the best offer is, no matter who it's from. Whoever's giving you the best offer, like you cannot do a half rebuild because then what will happen is you're just setting yourself back even more because you'll see generational talents come in, or you'll see really solid players coming through the draft and like, man, we could have had him if we would have taken this. Like, don't. If you're gonna rebuild it, if you're gonna get rid of Trae Young, I know you just got him this season, but get rid of DeJounte Murray too. And I know you've been trying to do it for the past couple of years. And whether Trae Young we're going to get traded or not, I'm pretty sure John Collins was going to be on the move this offseason anyway. Make that happen too. Like I said, Clint Capella has proven this season that he is still reliable. I think a lot of people kind of forgot that because the Rockets had to move on from him in order to make Harden and Russ work back when Russ was in Houston. But Clint Capella is still valuable. Clint Capella is still a walking double-double at minimum. He's still one of the best rebounders in the game. He's still very reliable down low. And he's still, at the very least, a veteran leader that any young team would be happy to have. Or any championship team that just really needs a big would be happy to have. Like a team like the Warriors or the Lakers, even the Clippers could maybe go call and inquire about Clint Capella. Like if you're gonna blow it up, Atlanta. Just do it. Don't half it. If you're gonna do it, do it. Speaking of the Lakers, we were talking before the show about how somehow the chips always seem to fall for LeBron to kind of get maybe easy way. I think the Lakers would have won this game anyway because I've never been a fan of the Wolves. I remember there were people talking about some of the Wolves were going to be one of the best teams in the West, and they're the 8th seed. And they have not been one of the best. Now, I get it. Cat did miss 4 months, but Cat's also the corniest player in basketball today.
He is.
So, I don't know. Rudy Gobert is not playing because he punched Kyle Anderson in the face, as I mentioned earlier. And so he will not be flying with the team to LA to play this game. Jaden McDaniels will not be playing this game because he was so upset that he was so traumatized that Rudy Gobert punched Kyle Anderson in the face that he went to go punch a wall and now his hand is broken. So he's not playing either. I think it's safe to say the Wolves are going to lose this game. I would be shocked if they win this game because they really just have Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns. And even though Karl-Anthony Towns is corny, he's a good basketball player. And Anthony Edwards, I think, is a good basketball player. But that's not enough to beat the Lakers, especially with what we've seen from the Lakers to this point. So I don't do this often, but we're just going to pretend like we both agree the Lakers are going to win. And we're going to preview Lakers-Grizzlies. Because even though the Lakers are the 7th seed, is it considered an upset legitimately? I know it'll be on paper because it's 7-2, but legitimately, would it be an upset if the Lakers were to get the best of the Grizzlies in a 7-game series, which I think they're more than capable of doing with the way they've been playing basketball recently?
Grizzlies are number 2 seed. I mean, Absolutely, it'd be the Grizzlies have been a better basketball team from game 1 to game 82. Period. So yes, and the Lakers have not. The Lakers have had ups and downs.
True.
Now, D'Angelo Russell being there, they have like a little big three thing going on. They're
Yep.
8-1 when Russell and LeBron and AD are all playing together
Yep.
because AD and LeBron couldn't stay healthy in the stretch, or maybe the
Mhm.
team was just managing them to get ready for the playoffs, whatever the case may be. They only have 9 games together. So the sample size may be too small to call it a big three, but they're 8-1. So I take it for what it is. I'm going to assume that LeBron and Anthony Davis are ready to go. And so, yeah, they probably should. Whatever chance that the Timberwolves did have is gone now that Jaden McDaniels pulled an Amari Stoudemire. And I mean, geez, when Rudy Gobert punched him, Taurean Prince pushed Rudy Gobert, not in a way that was like, hey, break this up. It was in a way of, hey, man, I am so sick of you. You've been pulling this, like, it was like one of those pushes, like, dog.
We were talking before the show. Rudy Gobert ruins everything. He ruins everything.
Thanks for COVID, Rudy. And so when it comes to the Grizzlies, again, outside of Ja Morant's foolishness, I mean, they've been literally as solid as a team as anybody in the league.
Yeah.
Arguably a top 5 team in the league, if however you want to, I mean, outside. Sure. So you got Milwaukee, the top 3 teams in the East, right? Milwaukee, Philly, Boston. Yep. And then you have the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah. That's
4 teams. Who are you going to throw in that 15? It has to be, maybe Phoenix, even though because Kevin Durant just got there.
Yeah.
But that he just got there, and we're just projecting in terms of what we've seen. It's Memphis. So if the Lakers were to somehow beat Memphis, then to me that would be a huge upset to me.
So I feel like, we talk all the time about like conspiracy theories, and by we I mean you and me, but also like just in general as fans, like we always talk about conspiracy theories about like we look, whether we want to admit it or not as fans, whether you want to admit it or not as fans, these teams are so much more in control of their path to championships than we like to give them credit for.
Yeah.
Do you think it's at all possible? Right. If you look at the way the bracket is set up, right, they're on the bottom half of the bracket, which means they wouldn't have to see the Suns or the Nuggets until the conference finals if they get there. How realistic on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think it is that the Lakers were looking at and like, you know what? We're going to stay on this bottom half because the Grizzlies are young, and they're the second seed. They're young and not that experienced. The Kings are a feel-good story, and they're also super young if they get past the Warriors. And if the Warriors beat the Kings, the Warriors, even though they're defending champions, have the worst home road splits this season. And I like and the Lakers are saying, I like our chances down here than up there with Denver, Phoenix, and LA. Like, do you think that played a part in, because you mentioned maybe they were loading him, and I know AD missed a couple back-to-backs down the stretch a little bit, like he didn't play 2 games in a row for I think once or twice down this row, and LeBron also kind of like waited a little bit longer before he hopped in. Like, do you think that played a role into the Lakers, or do you think that's just kind of just like how it happened? I think they did this on purpose.
100%.
I would do it on purpose. There's no way you don't.
LeBron has proven to be a very smart NBA player. He knows the situation. He knows. And so, like if we're in the load management era, so people look at data. LeBron knows the data better than everybody. And so I would not be shocked if they decided to play their cards this way for that reason. Their best shot at getting to the Western Conference is to stay at the bottom, to punch up and let the chips fall where they may. But they don't want to see a Denver or Memphis in the first round, or they didn't want to make the play-in tournament to beat a team that they were close, to the Clippers. I think the Clippers are a better team. They don't want to sit in the middle of the seedings and face the Clippers. I don't think they want problems with the Kings. Like, I think they looked at matchups and said, okay, this is our best way to sit here in the play-in, figure it out from there. Yeah, we're going to have to play more games. But I think that's how they did it. Sports PSP, you're about 5 minutes too late, buddy. Rudy Gobert is an idiot, plain and simple.
Let's be completely honest here. No team ever in the history of basketball paid, prior to this past offseason, paid 2 centers a $200 million supermax.
Yeah.
And the Wolves, the Timberwolves did it in a span of like a year. give or take a couple months. They paid Cat and they traded for Rudy Gobert and extended him. And the first thing he comes out and says is, I'm here to take this team to the finals. Be for real. Like, be so for real right now. You've got the corniest player in basketball in Karl Anthony Towns, who deepens his voice in post-game interviews to make him seem like he's that guy, and who comes back and hits through free throws, talking about something, this is what movies is made of. Like, he's that guy. And then you got Rudy Gobert, the most, I don't care what anybody says about the defensive player of the year or anything like that. Rudy Gobert might be the most, the largest defensive liability there ever is that's ever won a defensive player of the year, let alone three. Like, he's so unreliable defensively, but he wins defensive player of the years because he's the ultimate help side defender and all this other nonsense. And he just benefited from defenses having no choice but to funnel inside and then force outside to match with whatever it was Donovich was doing on the other side of the ball. The Timberwolves are garbage. They are a joke. This is the same basketball team that celebrated making it out of the play-in last year like they had just won the whole thing and were on their way to Disney World. Forget the Timberwolves. Anyway, let's talk about another mediocre basketball team. The Chicago Bulls are the 9th seed in the East, and they are having to host the Toronto Raptors, who have also had their fair share of ups and downs this season. I think a lot of people thought the Raptors were going to be a lot better than they were, but here they are. Again, like I said earlier, the winner of this game has to play another game, but the loser is done. So this is winner go home, playoff style, Game 7 style. Who's going home, Jerm?
The Sixers fan in me will never root for Pascal Siakam, so I'm rooting for the Bulls, even though I do think the Bulls have a legitimate shot. The Raptors have been okay. Both teams have been playing well lately, but Zach LaVine is probably the biggest star between the two teams. So when two teams are close matchup wise, I'm going to pick the team that has the biggest star, because I think when the game matters, the star will tip the scale. Since the All-Star break, LaVine's been averaging like 27 points per game. So I'm going to roll. I'm going to roll with the Chicago Bulls here.
I agree, and I do. Whoever wins this one, I think is going to be the 8th seed, because I agree with you. Like we said earlier, I think the Heat beat the Hawks. I don't think the Hawks can beat either of these teams, and so these teams are just going to play 2 games just to get beat by Giannis in 4 or 5.
That's the reward.
I do think, that's the reward. A beat down from Giannis Antetokounmpo. I do think though that the Bulls have the edge. I think, ironically enough, they're the better team, even though they've been flailing up and down throughout the course of the season. I know Lonzo's obviously been dealing with a lot of injuries. But like, this is another team that, again, tried to do a half rebuild by trading for DeRozan or signing DeRozan, and it just didn't work out. Like, I'm fully anticipating that Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are not going to be in Chicago in the summer. I would be shocked if they stay. Like, this is just, it's not Vucevic as well. This just isn't working. Like, bringing these two together was supposed to get them over the hump, but the hump for them was to make it to the playoffs and win a playoff series. So they failed. Like, this was not going to be a championship contender with this roster. No shot at these guys, but it just wasn't going to be enough. Like, so this was to get them to win a playoff series. I don't think they've won a playoff series since they've been together. And so this has been a failure, and it's time to blow it up. Like, the NBA, the one problem we have with the NBA now is we have teams that hold on to these projects way too long. Let it go. Like, you've had 2 years of it. It hasn't worked. Everyone's been hurt. The only guy that hasn't been hurt that much is DeRozan. And even though he's been great, it still hasn't been enough. Like, it hasn't been enough. Lonzo's hurt. Prayers up for him and his injuries. Alex Caruso's been dealing with injury. LaVine's been out of line with injury. Vucevic has been the epitome of a disappointment down low. He has 10 good games a season, but like, he's not matching up with Giannis. He's not stopping Embiid. He's not stopping Evan Mobley. Like, he's not stopping any of the guys he's not even competing with the guys down low he's supposed to be competing with. It's just not working. They also need to blow it up. And just, this is going to be the catalyst for that. They'll win this game. See, but the tough thing is, like, they're going to win these 2 games, and they might still win against the Bucks. And then the front office is going to go, maybe we should keep him around for 1 more year. Like, no, blow it up. Get rid of all of them. This should be the last year we see LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic on the same team in Chicago. I think all 3 of them should be gone. Not because they're all bad, because, again, like I said with the Hawks, get as much back as you can and do the rebuild properly. And I think all three of these guys are still worth something to somebody, just not them. I think that they've made that clear.
I agree.
Last one, Thunder Pelicans. This might be the most exciting play-in game of the week. I think it is. You've got SGA and the crew on one side. You've got Brandon Ingram and the crew on the other side. This is going to be a tough one because I think either one of these two teams are going to cause matchup problems for the Nuggets. Like, both of these teams are going to be the Wolves. I don't care if Rudy Gobert comes back or not for the next game. They're going to beat that team. I could see either of these two teams knocking off the Nuggets just because they've got that young exuberance and they both fight until the very end. But who do you have winning this game and moving on to the game 3 of the play-in?
This was the hardest game. When I looked at the numbers, I looked at the players, I looked at everything. If the Thunder can hit their perimeter shots, because they're not good defensively, they can win this game. But I mean, Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum have just been playing so well, man. Like, especially Brandon Ingram. It's such a good matchup. I'm going to go with the Pelicans just because I wouldn't bet like a significant amount of money on it. No. I'm not that confident in it. I'm just going with the team that's been playing better more recently. That's so true. I want the Thunder to win. I think it's a great story. They came out of nowhere, much like the Kings, the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with the Pelicans here.
I agree. The only tough thing for the Pelicans is, and it's no surprise because that's been the story of his career at this point, but Zion's out. It's unlikely that it's unlikely he'll play in this game. It's even more unlikely that he'll play. It's a little bit more likely, but not as much likely that he'll play come first round if they get there. But not only Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy and Herb Jones have also been incredible down the stretch as well for them. They're the better defensive team by a lot. And I think that's what it's going to come down to for the Thunder, unfortunately, is as great as they are at shooting the ball, they are not that good defensively, which is surprising because they have, like Katie said the other day, they've got a lot of lengthy guys that are very versatile and are good at defending. They're good individual defenders, but we talked about earlier, like, this is just not a good there's good individual defenders and then there's great team defense. This is not a good team. This is not good team defense. All these guys can play defense individually. Team defense, not so much. I agree. I do give the edge to the Pelicans in this one as well. But it's going to be the most exciting game of the play-in tournament for the week.
It's the one I'm most excited about. 100%. 100%.
I mean, look, we're going to see the Lakers do their thing, and we're going to see Jimmy Butler do his thing. And the Bulls are probably going to be the Raptors. But this is the one game that, like, probably if you go on any betting app right now, it's the closest thing to a pick'em there is if it's not already listed as a pick'em. This one's going to be the most exciting one. It's going to be the closest. Usually this is the part of the show where I have, I guess, plug, but since we're part of the network, it's all
subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah, we're the same place.
The same place. So
yeah.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a shot network on YouTube. Subscribe. There's a bunch of amazingly talented shows a part of the network. So much fun stuff. I was telling Jerm before the show that the WNBA draft was tonight. Just concluded maybe a couple minutes ago. I was checking my phone throughout the course to see who was getting drafted where. There's a chance that I do a draft recap of that this week. If not this week, it definitely be next week for next week's show. And there will be a lot more of that over the course of the summer, through the course of the season. It's always a pleasure to work with Jerm. Like Jerm said, it's the first time Jerm's been on the show. I'm a shot boy, which is fun.
Yeah,
and of course, it won't be the last because now it's like I just got to go knock on the door next door instead of like
and the cubicle, yell across the cubicle, man. We'll be here.
So it's always a pleasure to work with Jerm. It is an amazing honor to be a part of the Shot Boys. And yeah, man, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. Follow on all the socials if you're not already. Not just for me, but for Jerm and for JT and the Don and for the High Spot Podcast and for the Divide Live and for all of the amazing content that we provide here at the Give Us a Shot Network throughout the course of the week. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch more content throughout the course of the week. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there's going to be a lot of it. I know the Divide comes on Friday live.
Yep.
Fox Sports The Gambler. I'm sure JT and Don are going to have a show this week as well. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for putting up with me and Jerm for the last hour of your lives.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was fun for you guys. And as always, enjoy the rest of your lives.